As a professional videographer, I've been keen to expand my portable lighting kit. So in this video, I'm going to review, show you some real world usage and tests of the Neewer HB80C bicolor and full RGB video light. So the Neewer, it's got two E's, so I feel like Neewer. I'm gonna say that for the rest of the review. The HB80C is an 80 watt light with a built-in battery, a decent colour accuracy, which we will touch a bit more on later, and features full RGB as well as bicolor, warm and cool LEDs. If you're into photo or video, you've probably some form of budget Neewer accessories in your kit, but this light, having tried it out, God, it even smells Neewer. It feels much more premium than I expected. Just for transparency, this isn't a paid review, I don't do paid reviews. However, I did get sent the light for free in exchange for an honest review. As nice as it is to do those shoots that let you take unlimited amounts of kit, I often find myself trying to cram everything into a small bag, and also a bag for stands and tripods on solo shoots, especially when I'm travelling by train or tube. A few shoots previously, I've taken that small Andoer light that I reviewed in a previous video. The only problem with those small cheap lights is if you want to battery power them, you have to add on the battery mount handle, the batteries themselves, perhaps a charger for those batteries, as well as a separate power supply just in case you get on location and you can power it through the mains power supply. So it soon becomes quite a clunky affair. So having the built-in battery in this is much less mess, much less kit to carry, and the built-in battery in this does 65 watt power at just over an hour, and the 45 watt mode at just over an hour and a half. Now for me, this is usually more than enough to grab the interview or piece to camera that I'm recording for these sort of light carry shoots. You can of course still power it from an external power supply, or power it with an external battery that has a USB-C power delivery out for longer shooting. And I'll touch more on the light output in a moment to see how it compares to my Aperture 120D Mark II, which I actually use in the studio as my key light. The other size saving comes from the fact that this takes a standard USB input instead of a proprietary power supply taking up room in your bag, so you can just have the one USB-C charger and cable that you might have had anyway. If you're like me, I take a MacBook on most shoots and will want a power supply for that, so I can take the same power supply for that and this. The package I was sent has no USB charger included. There is a more expensive package with one. However, I decided to pick up a separate 100 watt power supply for around £30, which I can confirm works to the full 80 watts in this light. To activate the 80 watt output, you do have to cycle through the fan modes on this and select the highest fan mode. There are three, one for 80 watt, one for 65 watt, and one for 45 watts. Oh, and by the way, I tried it with my 140 watt MacBook charger, but I couldn't get it to output anything above the 65 watt output, hence why I bought this other power adapter. There are a lot of modes and options on this light, so let's go through them one by one so you see what you get. So in this first mode, we have an option for intensity, for the color temperature, and then for a green magenta shift. So that mode is fairly self-explanatory. As you can see, the intensity turns up and down. The color temperature literally cycles all the way down from 2500 Kelvin all the way up to 7500 Kelvin, so really white light. The next mode we have obviously intensity like before, but we also have a hue adjustment, so you can just go through the whole hue wheel. I will take this moment to say I wish it had an option to go up in bigger denominations. The next mode is an effects mode, but just know these are the modes that are provided in the manual. I will show you a few examples. Bombs, explosions, I guess useful if you're doing a World War II reenactment biopic, I don't know. Next we have a load of presets. If we go all the way around, you can see there's different ones, presets, and it tells you the color temperature. We go all the way down to 2200K, which is a very warm light. The next feature is quite a nice sort of industry feature, and it's Lee and Roscoe gels. Likelihood is you've used lights with gels before, and this simulates the exact colors of those gels, which is really nice because you might be trying to match with other lights with those gels. This one is an XY one that changes the color based on XY numbers. I'll be honest, I don't understand this one. There's so many options to change color. This is like last on my list. This one I understand much more than XY. This one has intensity, your cool white LED, your warm white LED, and then RGB. Now let's quickly talk through the included accessories. The package I got sent, by the way, is currently down to around £150 on Amazon with a voucher that's on there as of shooting this. And it includes the following: a reflector bowl, a support mount with locking umbrella mount, a long high-powered USB cable, a desktop metal tripod with varying height options, a screw-on diffuser, a cuddly toy, and a nice bag to carry it all in. So on the front of this light is a nice full-sized Bowen's mount to attach your favourite light modifiers. It is plastic, but it does feel very high quality and particularly dense. The USB-C input works both ways, so you can use it to charge other devices if you need to, which is quite useful if you're on set and you run out of power for your drone. Now you may have seen various metrics to measure colour accuracy for video lights like CRI or TLCI. However, both of these are generally quite outdated. They're now metrics that don't truly reflect how good a light is for filmmaking purposes, and I'd advise most people to ignore those in favour of the SSI standard, developed by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. You know, the people who do the Oscars. There is a great deep dive into these colour standards by a channel called The DP Journey, and I will link his video below. But basically, TLDR, for tungsten 3200 Kelvin, an SSI rating of 80 is good, 85 is great, and 90 is excellent. And for daylight 5500 Kelvin, a rating of 75 is good, 80 is great, and 90 is excellent. And this light gets 74 rating for daylight, so around the good marker for that, and for tungsten it gets 85, which is particularly great. LEDs usually have more trouble with the blue spectrum, which is why we usually get a better tungsten score most of the time. So it's time for a little bit of real world testing. What I'm going to do is run all these lights, the Neewer, my Aperture 120D Mark II, and the cheap 60 watt light Andoer, all on full power, just so we can hear what the fans sound like running at full power. And then what I'll do is I'll flick between them and we can see a full brightness visualization on the wall. And finally, just so you can see a little comparison of how it renders skin tone and how it renders different colors, I'll flick between each three just on me as a headshot, shot through an umbrella with a bit of diffusion. So for this next part, you'll have to forgive me for being a little bit in the darkness, because I'm solely trying to show you an example of the brightness and also an audio test. So currently this is set to the 80 watt mode, which is the highest output mode, and at 100% brightness at 5500 Kelvin. So that's daylight, just to match with the Aperture 120D. I've been running these at 25 degrees in here, and I've been running them for at least 30 minutes in preparation to sort of get them up to heat and just to get them sort of running as they would run on a shoot if you were doing an interview. And one thing I have to say, I've definitely noticed that this newer one is incredibly quiet. I will now put the microphone up to the fan just so you can hear it. But even so, if I go quiet for a minute from just over a foot away, quickly flipping over to the Andoer 60 watt light, this is definitely louder, and if I go quiet for a moment you can hear the sound. And then if I put the mic up to the light, you'll be able to hear it quite loudly. And finally, what seems to me as the brightest light of the three, the Aperture 120D Mark II. However, I will say the fan at 100% definitely kicks in quicker and noisier. I think you can hear that fan, and if I put it up to the light, so in conclusion, a pretty impressive result for the Neewer, because it's got a decent brightness but with a very quiet fan. And now a final test, just so you can see how it looks bouncing a light off a white sheet back onto my face between the three lights, so you can get an idea for sort of skin tones and colours. And this is currently the aperture. So we're now set to 60% on the Neewer light. I seem to have a similar light reading. This is less a test about brightness and more a test about colour and to see how they match. And now, as a final comparison, this is the Andoer 60 watt light set to 100% brightness at 5500K. So let's summarise this up. Pros and cons. What do I think could be improved first of all? There's no charger included. There is a bundle where you can get one included, but there are better value chargers out there. There is no percentage on the battery indicator. I always like to know the exact percentage of my battery. Whilst it's not easy to knock off this power switch on the side, it is a little bit slippery and could be made slightly easier to use. The back dial only going up in single digits can sometimes be a little bit slow. It'd be great if you could click in and go up in increments of 10, for example. Perhaps being very picky, a slightly better SSI score for daylight would have been nice to have, but still, it was impressive from a bicolour plus RGB light. So onto the pros, having a light that one has a built-in battery to power it on a shoot, but also has USB power. The fact that it boosts up to 80 watts with the right power adapter is pretty impressive, as most lights in this price bracket and this size are usually the 60-65 watt lights. The actually quite useful app to control the light I particularly liked. The fact that this is RGB as well as bicolour makes it really flexible, and that you can get really warm or really cool tones as well as coloured tones and be able to do splashes of colour in your backgrounds. So overall, for the price, it's pretty impressive to get an LED cob light like this with decent enough colour accuracy and all the features that go along with it. It's great when it feels like not long ago we were wowed by all these cheap 60 watt LED cob lights that had much inferior LED chips in them. We really are spoilt for choice now. When I compare when I started earning a living doing this video malarkey about 10 years ago, I sound like an old man when I say that. You kids don't know how lucky you are. But it is great, all the options that we have now, and this is a particularly good one. So these are currently reduced to £150 on Amazon with their voucher if you tick it on the page. And I'll certainly be chucking this one in my bag for those small kit shoots in the future. Don't forget to check out the Andoer 60 watt cheap light review I mentioned in the video. See you in the next one.